Good day, students. Welcome to math.serve.com. And this clip we're going to be going over section 6.4 of our Algebra 2 virtual text. We are going to be looking at how to divide complex numbers. To get us started, there are a few things we're going to review to help us with the problem solving process. So let's go ahead and do a real quick review on some equations that will help us with the problem. So the first one has to do with the difference of squares. Difference of squares, or you can call it dose. So difference of squares basically shows you the expanded and factored form of a difference of squares. So if you have a minus b multiplied by a plus b, that equals the difference of squares a square minus b square. And you also have to remember how to simplify powers of I. Okay? So how do you simplify powers of I? Well, the rule is if you have I with a power that's greater than 1, it should be simplified. Okay? So I is just I. I square is the square of the square root of negative 1, which is negative 1. I to the third is the product of I and I square, which is negative I. And then I to the fourth is negative 1 square, which is 1. And this pattern repeats itself forever. So I to the 5, I to the 6, I to the 7. So every 4 you make a complete cycle, and then you start right back at the top. Okay? Alright, so the instructions are for us to simplify the following quotients. Let's start with question number 1. Let's say you have negative 10 minus 5i divided by 2i. So how do we do that? So to divide this, we have negative 10 minus 5i divided by 2i. You can think about this as the denominator having an I component is a problem, okay? So we need to get rid of that I in the denominator. So how do we go about that? Well, what we have to do is we want to find the conjugate of the denominator. Okay, so the denominator is 2i, which is the same thing as 0 plus 2i. So the conjugate of the denominator is what you get when you invert the sign of the imaginary part. So it's going to be 0 minus 2i, or simply negative 2i. Okay, so this is 0 plus 2i. The conjugate is 0 minus 2i. So what we're going to do is multiply the numerator and the denominator with negative 2i, which is the same thing as 0 minus 2i. Okay? So this is the conjugate of 2i. Now let's go ahead and distribute. If we distribute the numerator, what are we going to have? Let's distribute the numerator. Distribute negative 2 across 10 and negative 5. If we distribute that, we'll get minus times minus is a plus, so we have 20i. And then if you multiply negative 5i with negative 2i, minus times minus is a plus. 5 times 2 is 10. 10i. I times I is I square. And then in the denominator, you have minus 4i square. Now let's go ahead and simplify that. We have 20i. Now, I square should be simplified because it's a power greater than 1. That simplifies to negative 1. Okay? Using the chart we looked at earlier. And then in the denominator, the same applies. That reduces to negative 1 also for I square. So now we have 20i minus 10 divided by minus times minus is a plus divided by 4. Okay? So what can we reduce by? We can see that 2 goes into every single thing. Let's factor out 2 from the numerator. So if we factor out 2, we have 10i minus 5 divided by 4. You can write 4 as 2 times 2. And then you can clearly see that 2 is a common factor of the numerator and the denominator. So we can divide out that common factor. And that leaves us with 10i minus 5 over 2. and you want to write it in the standard a plus bi form, it can be written as negative 5 over 2 plus 10 over 2i. And then you can simplify that further. You can write it as negative 5 over 2 plus 5i. Okay, so these two forms are acceptable forms of your final result, the quotient of negative 10 minus 5i and 2i. Alright, let's take a look at another example. Let's say we have 6i divided by negative 7 plus 10i. So we are to simplify this quotient. So if we have 6i divided by negative 7 plus 10i, we're going to multiply by the conjugate of negative 7 plus 10i. Okay, so the conjugate of negative 7 plus 10i is what? Is negative 7 minus 10i. Okay, so the conjugate is negative 7 minus 10i. So what we're going to do is multiply the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate negative 7 minus 10i. Remember, you get the conjugate by switching the sign of the imaginary part of the complex number. Okay, in this case it's positive 10i. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and distribute. In the numerator, if we distribute 6i across those two terms, we're going to have negative 42i minus 60i squared divided by, in the denominator, we're going to FOIL it out. Okay, first outer, inner, last, just like we're multiplying two binomials. Alright, but since we have the formula for difference of squares, a plus b times a minus b is equal to a squared minus b squared, we can just use this formula because this is like a plus b and this is a minus b. So we have a difference of squares. So if we simplify, apply this formula here, we'll have negative 7 squared minus 10i squared, a squared minus b squared. So we simplify, we get negative 42i. I squared becomes negative 1, which changes this minus to a plus 60, over, in the denominator we have 49 minus 100i squared. So that gives us negative 42i plus 60 divided by 49. Now this I squared becomes negative 1 and changes this minus to a plus 100. Okay, now if we combine the denominator, we're going to have 60 minus 42i divided by 149. Okay, so you can write your answer like this, or you can break it up. If you want to have the real and imaginary parts, 60 over 149 minus 42 over 149i. Alright, so these are the two possible acceptable forms for the final answer. Alright, let's try one more example. Now what if you have negative 2 plus 6i divided by negative 10 minus 4i. Alright, let's go ahead and simplify that. So we have negative 2 plus 6i divided by negative 10 minus 4i. So we want to find a conjugate. So think about this as a minus b, okay? So if you want to create a difference of squares, you will multiply by a plus b, okay? So we're going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of negative 10 minus 5i, which is negative 10 plus 4i. So multiply the numerator and denominator by negative 10 plus 4i, and negative 10 plus 4i. In the numerator, we're going to FOIL that out. First outer, inner, last. So that's going to give us negative 20 first outer, negative 8i inner, negative 60i last, plus 24i square. And then in the denominator, we're just going to use the difference of squares formula, a square minus b square. So we'll have negative 10 square minus b square for I square. Okay, let's go ahead and simplify that. Alright, so a quick correction. Negative 2 times negative 10 is positive 20. Okay, let's go ahead and simplify that. So we're going to have 20, combine the middle terms, the like terms. We have minus 60 minus 8, so that's negative 68i. And then this I squared changes this plus to a minus, so we have minus 24. That divided by 10 squared, which is negative 10 squared, which is 100, minus 16i squared. Simplify that further. We have 20 minus 24 is negative 4 minus 68i divided by 100. Now I squared has to be reduced. It becomes minus 1, which changes this minus to a plus, plus 16. So we have negative 4 minus 68i divided by 116. And then we can, of course, factor out 4 from the numerator and the denominator. So that gives us 4 times negative 1 minus 68 divided by 4 is 117i. And then the denominator 116 is the same thing as 4 times 29. Okay, so you can see the 4's are factors, so we can divide that out, and that gives us the first form of our answer, which is negative 1 minus 17i over 29. Or you can write it in standard form, negative 1 over 29 plus 17 over 29i. So these two forms suffice for the quotient of negative 2 plus 6i minus 10 minus 4i. So how well did you get the problems that we just covered? To demonstrate mastery, we'd like you to try out the following problems. Just copy them down, do it, and of course press the pause button when you're working through it, and then click on play when you're done to check your answers. Okay, so the task is to simplify the following, and it will be displaying the answers momentarily. Okay, so number 1, what if you have 9i divided by negative 4 plus 9i? Number 2, 5 divided by negative 10 minus 7i. Number 3, what if you have negative 8 plus 2i over 1 plus 6i? Number 4, what if you have 7 minus 9i divided by 6 plus 8i? Alright, go ahead and pause the video and try out these 4 problems, and then we will be displaying the answers momentarily. Alright, let's hope that you had a chance to try out these problems. Let's take a look at what the answers are. For number 1, it's negative 36i plus 81 over 97. For number 2, you can write this as 50, negative 50 plus 35i over 149. For number 3, if you simplify this, you're going to get 4 plus 50i over 37, or you can break it up. And then for number 4, you're going to get negative 3 minus 11i over 10, or you can break it up also. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your studies of complex numbers, do give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable to us. If you have any questions or comments, just place it in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to other tutorials such as this. More clips can be found on math.serve.com. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.